Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rob Potter on the Victory of Light blog and Raymond Keller with the Victory of Light, sharing his amazing book today called Venus Rising. This was Raymond's first book, an incredible compendium of information, as are all of Raymond's books revolving around the planet Venus. This book is an excellent book, and I think we'll probably have to do two shows on this. It's a pretty thick book, so I have a minor situation here. I'm not going to show my face on the screen today. Raymond's going to do the entire show, and he's going to go as long as he wants today, and we're going to probably pick this up again and have add this to our series of Raymond's books. I know for sure when we get to Rockets to Venus, we'll probably definitely have two shows. There's so much information in that book. All right, Raymond, take it away with the Venus Rising in your fantastic PowerPoint presentation. And again, remember, folks, we do have Cosmic and Ray and Rob's cosmic mailbag. You can send questions to Rob at the Promise Revealed. I'm sorry, yeah, to the Promise Revealed at gmail.com. Okay, thank you very much, and be sure to check out the website.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Rob. It's always a pleasure to be on the Promise Reveal. And today we'll be taking a look at some of the first sections in my very first book, Venus Rising, A Concise History of the Second Planet. Okay, here on the screen, I'm going to magnify this. This is a poem that was written by the famous literary light of the last century, 106 years ago, a poem called Venus Transient, about the power of Venus, the planet seen as the bright morning star here on Earth, to inspire and serve as a muse. For me, you stand poised in the blue and buoyant air, cinctured by bright winds, treading the sunlight, and the waves which precede you ripple and stir the sands at my feet. I thought this was very appropriate, since this book, Venus Rising, attempts to look at how the planet Venus and the goddess Venus, the Venusians, and all things Venus have impacted society and culture throughout the centuries, and served as an inspiration for many poets and writers, artists, and so forth. In fact, I was just reading, going over one of the books in my collection. It's Nymphs of the Valley by Khalil Gibran. This was published in, this was called Nymphs of the Valley. And there's a hidden undertone here that this is really an ode to Venus, because it's about these Phoenician ruins, or that were built for Astarte, who was also recognized as in many of the ancient cultures of the Middle East under various names, as the only female goddess, which recognized in the sky as the planet Venus, the Greek Aphrodite, and the Roman Venus. And it's about it's a pair of lovers that are reunited across the millennia. And it's very, very interesting story. Nymphs of the Valley by Khalil Gibran, the famous poet from Lebanon, northern Lebanon. Okay, this is Sandro Botticelli's The Birth of Venus. You could see this painting in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, Italy. So we see Venus playing an important part in the revival of classicism, the classics, and leading into the Renaissance, and so forth. Now, our ancient ancestors, when they looked at Venus, they noticed that it had long tresses flowing behind it. And so this is how Venus came to be equated as the female goddess, the only female among the planets. This is because Venus does have a type of cometary tail. As Venus moves around the sun, its outer atmosphere interacts with the solar wind, thus creating a tail about 5 million kilometers long. And this is what our ancestors saw when Venus came in the closest approaches to the Earth. So the planet Venus and Earth are often thought of as twin planets. Venus is only about 250 miles in diameter, smaller than the Earth. It has a largely rocky surface, and it does have it has a very thick atmosphere, thicker than the Earth's, but there has been water vapor that scientists have detected in the Venusian atmosphere. So NASA and other futurists envision a tomorrow where we will live on Venus in floating cities in the cloud tops. They say that the atmosphere is breathable and so forth. So there's a lot of information in there about the plans for NASA and various space agencies to further explore the planet Venus. Then I look at Venus in a hidden dimension, and this is from a famous song by Lady Gaga called Venus in 2013. When you touch me, I die just a little inside. I wonder if this could be love, because you're out of this world, galaxy, space, and time. So this is looking at Venus in essentially another dimension. Many have written about Venus in other dimensions, and these various aspects of the planet are explored in the second chapter. One of the earliest mystical accounts of the goddess Venus as we approach the Middle Ages is that of Tannhauser. Tannhauser was a knight coming back from the Crusades, and on his way home he passed through the Alps, and he encountered a beautiful woman, dazzling, arrayed in white, and she was greeting this returning knight and invited him to come with her to a city called Venusberg, which was deep inside the Alps. And she extended her hand, he took it, and he went there, literally walked through a mountain. A doorway of light opened up, and he literally walked through this light, through solid rock into this mountain, and spent a year there. And this is the account of it, and was written during the time of the troubadours and so forth. And it's played every year in the German Opera House. And this is a scene from the play Tannhauser in 2013. Also, we look at various creatures that are associated with Venus and with the goddess Venus. And these would be doves and bees primarily. And this isn't uncommon for the pantheon of gods and goddesses to be associated with various animals and other forms of life. You know, we have Athena and the owl. The bear is associated with the goddess Diana, and so forth. As far as the bees go, as we know, bees are very industrious creatures. They live largely in hives, and they are ruled by a queen in a matriarchal society. And we explore in Venus Rising the origin of bees as their attachment to Venus. First as a gift from the Venusians to the earth millions of years ago, and then in the various aspects of astronomical, physical, provable connections with the planet Venus that go into great detail. Also, you know, there's a lot of accounts in the Bible about angels appearing to human beings, and we know from modern day accounts of contactees that the Venusians are very angelic. Of course, those that familiar with Valiant Thor know that he identified as an angel from Venus. And so we look at angels and aliens and the connections there, particularly with Venus. As far as angels and aliens go, there's many in the various religious communities that have associated the two. Billy Graham has said that he wouldn't be surprised if angels got to Earth in flying saucers. That was in his book, Angels, God's Secret Agents, published in 1975 on page 21, if you want to check that out. And then Rumi, who is a Sufi poet living back in the 13th century, had said that angels come from higher spheres, other planets in the solar system, and that there's 4,000 on Earth at any one time. And of course, Dr. Frank Stranges, who introduced the world to Valiant Thor, he had described 4 classifications of angels, 3 of which were coming in their largest contingent from Venus and visiting the Earth. And then Venus in science fiction. A lot of people know about Edgar Rice Burroughs, and he wrote about the inner world, Pellucidar. He wrote about Carter of Mars. And then he also wrote 5 books about an adventurer named Carson Napier on the planet Venus. And so we look at the connections of science fiction as well. And it's surprising, really, in science fiction, how often they get it right. I think back to like Jules Verne, and he predicted that the first spaceship, manned spaceship to the moon would be launched from Florida. He got it within 200 pounds, the actual weight of the Apollo rocket, and all kind of amazing things. Jonathan Swift, when he wrote about about Mars. He said it had 2 small moonlets, and we knew after Schiaparelli in the 1880s that these were Phobos and Deimos. So we know that this is pretty amazing stuff, really. And then we look at the secret doctrine of the Bible and esoteric teachings, knowledge, wisdom from Tibet, wisdom from the New pre-New Testament times, the Essenes in the New Testament times, and the post apostolic period, and so forth. Venus was always highly regarded. Jesus self-identified with the planet Venus. Here's a quote from Revelation 22:16. I, Jesus, have sent mine angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and offspring of David and the bright and morning star. This is Helena Blavatsky, the co-founder of the Theosophical Society. She was born in Russia in 1831, bordering the Ukraine, and died in the British Isles in 1891. But Helena Blavatsky was an inspiration to me in writing Venus Rising, because she was the author of Venus, History of a Planet, 135 years previous to when Venus Rising was published. And as a member of the Theosophical Society, I felt that it was time for an updated version on what's going on with Venus. So it's a great introduction to the planet if you check out this book. Looking at various figures from esoteric literature, Gnostic Gospels, even the Bible, we see that there are a group of highly advanced spiritual beings known as the Aeons, which were angels present in the universe since the time of the creation, and exploring their connections with the planet Venus as revealed by Helena Blavatsky and others. This is a scene from the movie, The Last Temptation of Christ. You see Mary Magdalene, Jesus, and Judas. And the importance of that movie is that it explored the Gospels in the light of a battle between good and evil, between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. And so we look at Venus in that aspect, as well as in astronomy, astrology as well. Venus in the various constellations. Venus in Libra facilitates cosmic awareness. And usually when Venus is going through the sign of Libra, there are significant revelations that come forth regarding our friendly neighbors in space, and the influence that Venus has on our own charts individually, astrologically, that is. So these are the signs in the Jewish tradition, the Kabbalah. Lamed, the sign, connects to the upper spiritual realm of Noga, which is a reference to the planet Venus as an angelic realm. And the symbol Pe helps us strike a balance in life. So all these are explored in significant detail in this book. So the word Lucifer is a name which means the bringer of light. And in this case, the Romans sometimes referred to the planet Venus as being a type of Lucifer or light bearer, and so this shouldn't be confused with the Hebrew description of the adversary, which is Satan. And Helena Blavatsky explained how these became convoluted over time and was a disservice to Venus, especially for all the positive references that are made to that celestial orb in the pages of the Bible. Going back to 7, 8 centuries before the birth of Christ to the ancient Persian Empire, we see that there was a pantheon of deities described by Zoroaster as coming to earth with wings. And this was simply denotive of their ability to traverse the sky. The same thing can be said of angels, that their ability to fly is largely symbolically represented with the depiction of wings, like on the Zoroastrian deity. This is Zoroaster, 7th century before the Common Era. And he had many visions of great battles in the heavens between the forces of light and darkness. And there are many overlapping theologies, cosmologies in Zoroastrianism and Judaism, even Christianity too, when you look at the book of Revelation. In Zoroastrian legend, Venus was conquered by Mitra. Now, by the 16th century, when the Renaissance Polish astronomer Nicholas Copernicus verified the heliocentric nature of the solar system, the planet Venus was considered to dominate the third of 7 celestial levels, with each one being thought of as a heavenly realm. So these were the known bodies of the solar system at the time. So there were 7 of them. Hence, we get this term seven heavens, seventh heaven. So these were the bodies that could be seen with a naked eye, without a telescope. Then when Galileo and Copernicus came along, telescopes were available to discover other celestial orbs, and also to discover that the planets orbited around the sun, that it was heliocentric system. Dante Alighieri was born in Florence, Italy in 1265 and died in 1321 at 56 years of age. This is also a painting by Sandro Botticelli, made posthumously of Dante in 1494. He's the same one that did the birth of Venus. And Dante is important because he wrote the Divine Comedy, which consists of Il Paradiso, Il Purgatorio, and Il Infierno, which is heaven or paradise, purgatory, and hell. So he wrote about these, and he depicted a journey in there in his 3rd and 9th canto of a trip to the planet Venus, where he met many angelic beings, including the Savior, Jesus Christ. Dante encounters angels on Venus. This is from a wood cutting by, that's a famous same artist that did the work for Milton's Paradise Paradise Lost. So Venus takes to the street. Women worldwide are organizing and struggling for equal rights under her planetary symbol. So a lot of times when you see women's rights marches and so forth, you'll see the circle with the cross under it. It's the planetary symbol for the planet Venus, not the clenched fist, just the circle with the cross underneath it. So the orbits of Venus and the Earth are in a near perfect harmony, creating beautiful resonant patterns corresponding to the Fibonacci spiral number sequence. So we know that for every higher Fibonacci number representing the orbits of Venus, years of Venus, the next lowest Fibonacci number represents the orbits of Earth. So for every 13 Venusian years, there's eight Earth years. For every 8 Venusian years, there's exactly 5 Earth years, and so forth. So the orbit of Venus, when bringing the planet in closer conjunction with the Earth, creates a pattern of a pentagram. For this reason, among many others, the ancients consider Venus to be a divine orb. This has to do with the sacred geometry inherent in the Earth-Venus orbital relationship, based on 5 conjunctions in 8 Venus year cycles. So this is when Venus comes closest to the Earth at these 5 equidistant points along the orbit of the 2 planets. So of all the celestial orbs in the heavens, except for the sun and moon, Venus is by far the brightest one, has the greatest magnitude. Okay, then we're going to take a look at the contactees in this section. George Adamski, who was the one that encountered a Venusian cosmonaut on the Southern California desert, outside of Desert Center, California, about 10 miles to the northeast of Desert Center, in 1952, wrote 3 books about Venus and Venusians. And in his second book, Inside the Spaceships, in 1955, he wrote that your understanding of life and the universe is very, very limited. And as a result, you have many false concepts about other worlds and the composition of the universe, and so little knowledge of yourselves. But it is also true that there is a growing desire on the part of many of Earth who seek sincerely for greater understanding. We who have traveled the path you now are treading are willing to help and to give of our knowledge to all who will accept it. This is a depiction of a beautiful Venusian woman that appeared to Howard Menger as a 10-year-old boy in the woods not far from his home in New Jersey. The painting appears in Howard Menger's book, From Outer Space to You, published by the Zoroastrian Press in 1959. It was at a meeting in 1958 when Howard was still in the process of writing this book that Valiant Thor and some of his crew appeared at the High Bridge, New Jersey Flying Saucer Club meeting. And all the details of that are also supplied, and many fresh new details in the Venus Rising book. Another of the early contactees was Tuesday Love Song Rampa. He was British plumber, carpenter, handyman. He was up on the roof of his house repairing the roof, replacing some shingles, and he fell off the roof, and his wife came out and um, when it, when she managed to wake him up, he was okay, but he couldn't uh, remember who he was, and all of a sudden he had the consciousness of a Tibetan lama, and he later on went on to write many books like The 13th Candle and many illuminating books about ancient Tibet. He was able to speak the language. Even the Dalai Lama said, if you want to know anything about Tibet, you have to consult Tuesday Love Sung Rampa. But he wrote a book called My Trip to Venus, where he described flying to Venus on board a flying saucer with a group of lamas, and being received there as rock stars, and all the fantastic science and the advanced spirituality that the Venusians have. He met with the Venusian master there and wrote about that as well. Rampa and the other lamas saw cities beyond imagination on Venus. This is a photograph of George Adamski, the first ambassador to outer space, the one that I had just mentioned, who had the contact in the Southern California desert. And Adamski stands next to a portrait of Orthon, the Venusian saucer pilot. This is a typical Venusian scout ship, a photograph. You see the 3 condenser balls on the bottom. These are accumulators for electrical energy from the magnetic lines of force which surround the Earth. And so the scout craft operate within the vicinity of the Earth and within the Earth's atmosphere, and outside the Earth's atmosphere, the smaller scout ships can only operate within the vicinity of the larger carrier ships or motherships. This is a photograph of a mothership taken by George Adamski with a 6-inch reflector telescope at Palomar Gardens in California on the 29th of May, 1950. So prior to the 20th of November of 1952, he was in telepathic communication with Venusians, and he would know where he should go to take pictures of the spaceships, because they would telepathically communicate that information to him. Now, the contactees began to appear in great numbers during the 1950s. There was a lot of interest and enthusiasm about space, and a man was moving into the atomic age and the age of intercontinental missiles. And of course, many science writers were writing about the possibility of adapting missiles into rockets so we could go and explore beyond our own atmospheric boundary. And a lot of interest was going on about what will we find out there when we get there. And of course, all the hysteria about flying saucers, beginning with their appearance in great numbers as over the American West when we began nuclear testing and so forth. And what was going on in the Soviet Union with the Cold War created a lot of controversial science fiction films. One was George Pal's adaptation of H.G. Wells' famous War of the Worlds. And that was a 1953 production, and those were the evil Martians. And then kind of analogous to the threat posed by the Russians at the time. And then on the good side of the scorecard, we had movies like The Day the Earth Stood Still in 1951 with Patricia Neal and Michael Rennie. And interestingly, the co-author of George Adamski's first book Sir Desmond Leslie, a British royalty, he was a scientific consultant on this movie as well as its sequel, Stranger from Venus, which was produced in the British Isles a couple of years later. And it also starred Patricia Neal, but they had a different character playing Michael Renee's part. Donald E. Kehoe was a retired Marine Corps major. He wrote a series of articles beginning in 1950 with True magazine about flying saucers being interplanetary spaceships. And he felt that they might represent some kind of threat to the Earth, like they were doing a military reconnaissance preparatory to an invasion. And he was a technical consultant and provided the design for the saucers in the movie Earth versus the Flying Saucers, American Pictures, 1956. Since June of 1957, the Science and Security Board of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists displayed the Doomsday Clock on a wall of its editorial office on the campus of the University of Chicago. It's interesting, isn't it, that the Doomsday Clock was set up with the first appearance en masse of the flying saucers with Kenneth Arnold in June of 1947 over Mount Rainier, 9 disc-shaped objects flying in formation. And then toward the beginning of July, then July 2nd, we have, after a flurry of sightings all throughout June, one of the objects crashed at Roswell. None of this is just coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. There was a gentleman, George Van Tassel. He was an aircraft pilot. He moved out to California from Ohio. He bought an airport out there, a giant rock, and he began to hold the interplanetary spacecraft conventions. And he built this Integratron at the direction of a Venusian scout ship pilot named Solganda. Here's an artist's conception of an Adamski-type Venusian scout ship. Back in the 1950s, they even made a model of it where the kids could put together, together with rockets and other kind of spacecraft. And this is from the box. I think it's kind of more than coincidental. It looks like Howard Menger and his brother Alan that are looking at this Venusian scout ship coming in for a landing. So this is a photo of giant rock near Landers, California, and aptly demonstrates its immensity. Toward the beginning of the 21st century, I think 2003, the larger rock there got struck by lightning, and the top third of it came off. But people have been drawn to its spiritual energy, and it's known to possess very unusual piezoelectric effects. It's like a battery, like a capacitor. It stores electricity, and that's what UFO specialists believe attracts the flying saucers, because they can recharge off of that rock. This is UFO contactee George Van Tassel, born in 1910 and died in 1978. So he started these interplanetary spacecraft conventions in April of 1954, and they continued all the way through 1977 was the last one. And he even would have had one in 78, except that he was had passed away. So this comic is from a local paper in Palm Springs, California, about George Van Tassel and his encounter with Solganda, and which he misspelled, but it's kind of humorous, and people all around that area, Palm Springs, Joshua Tree, Yucca Valley, they all know about George Van Tassel, and he's become quite a legendary figure in the UFO movement. Dana Howard was one of the lesser known contactees in the United States in the 1950s. There were many females that were contactees as well. Unfortunately, they never received the attention that the men did. Anyway, Dana Howard claimed that she married a Venusian and raised a family on Venus, and another one that she had on Earth. And so I thought that was very interesting. And she's written several books about life in outer space, as well as a novel about women's rights and a woman becoming a future president of the United States, which is pretty interesting for the 1950s. Van Tassel claimed that he received messages from Ashtar, a Venusian starship commander. Then toward the end of the contactee period, there was a movie that kind of impressed me about Venus called First Spaceship on Venus. It was based on a novel by the Russian science fiction writer Stanislav Lem, and in this movie, a warning is received from a long lost intelligence on Venus that recorded a message and sent it to Earth, warning about the dangers of atomic warfare, which destroyed their planet. It kind of fits into the contactee message. So my question at the end of this first section of Venus Rising is, does this angel herald the arrival of a new age or the apocalypse? So when we look at the second part of Venus Rising, A Concise History of the Second Planet, we will examine that on the next episode.
Thank you, Raymond. That was great. So we're going to do Venus Rising Part 2, right?
Yes, we'll do that. We will do that. I'll have to, whenever date is convenient for you.
We'll set that up, folks. Thank you so much, Dr. Keller. And we'll look forward to that on my YouTube website and Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
All right.